Mr. Rigsey is part of an international consortium of researchers and investigators. They go by the name Drastic, and Drastic is the enterprise of Drastic is researching and investigating the true origin of SARS-CoV-2, the causative agent of COVID-19.
When the pandemic started, I was in the final semester of my MBA program. Everything shut down. So as a consequence, because of my background and my interest, I spent that time really digging into, okay, what is this pandemic? What is it? What is it actually going to look like? Working with the data. And then in mid-2020, I got a call from the former senior Marine that I worked with, who said, hey, you should look at the origin of this thing because it looks suspicious. And I did. And ever since then, for the last 5 years, 4.5, 5 years, that's exactly what I've been doing. And ultimately, within about 6 months of that, I joined a group called Drastic, which is approximately 20 scientists and researchers from all around the globe. 3/4 of them are in the Eastern Hemisphere. So it's a very international group of researchers. We gathered on Twitter, and from there, we just exchanged information.
I believe that the two elements of what I consider to be a crime, and I think you probably agree with me, the true origin of SARS-CoV-2, the recklessness, the entire bioweapons program, as I perceive it. Now, you may beg to differ on that characterization, but that's one element. The second element is the concealment, the constructive, organized fraud that was committed by a remarkable number of players to conceal the true origin of SARS-CoV-2. I think it's the largest, the greatest true crime story in the history of man. Now, we know that military occupation regimes, the Germans in Poland and during the Second World War, or crimes that the Soviet army committed in Poland, these various totalitarian regimes and their military units in the 20th century committed horrible atrocities, the Japanese as well, and China, the rape of Nanking. But if we set aside these crimes that were committed by military units under the cover of warfare and look at crimes committed within a civilian context, I think this is the greatest in history. That's sort of my view of the matter. As we discussed at lunch yesterday, the difficulty in communicating with the public about this crime is, it seems to me, two elements. The scale of the crime is so vast that most people have a hard time just getting their minds around it.
But the more I dug into it, the more I realized you cannot separate the way the response was handled from how they also were covering up the origins of the virus itself. They're directly intertwined, and that's why they spent so much time trying to fight and suppress the true origin of the pandemic, because it would expose these links between all the research they were doing, and then even more nefarious, how they chose to respond to it. We can see from their actions speak louder than words, and their actions were all about protecting themselves rather than protecting us. The origin of the virus and the response, i.e. the vaccine and everything else, was intimately intertwined. You could not separate the two. What you end up with is a massive crime against humanity. Our response to the virus was a crime against humanity. because they knew what it was and still tried to cover up what it was from the public. And then they tried to profit from it. So I literally could not imagine a more nightmare scenario in terms of people in leadership positions taking the wrong steps and the wrong choices at every single step along the process. It's horrific.